Hello, everybody. We are back in mini proposal workshops. Then let's jump into. I will start from the left side, so the dashboard. So the main thing about this dashboard is like to import data into dashboard database, and then import happens through integrations. So from Google Sheet, Figma, Notion, GitHub, Discord, Zoom, Microboard, SurveyMonkey. Are there any integrations you would want to have if there would be a tool which would like pull the data in through that integration and give you an assessment and dissemination or build your basically knowledge management? And are there any integration you think we are missing and would be more important than listed here? And yeah, let's start with that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't want to necessarily hold up things when you were asking for any questions, but is the idea, I'll just be clarifying for myself probably, but in any case, the overall idea is to incorporate the AI into different aspects of everything you have mapped out here. Or
yes. The idea is the big vision is to build a sustainable open source community infrastructure that provides an AI tool to automate meeting documentation and retrieve insights. So there is that kind of speciality to go into meeting documentation and like in meetings in general, and use AI to extract information or create information.
Right.
And
it's interesting because I had one of my very first interactions with the OpenAI was asking it about blockchain, and it immediately started giving me different ways that it can incorporate itself into blockchain technology. I have a screen open to show you if you're curious, or I can just read it, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, for me, it was profound. It was just crazy because, it gave me 4 points. It detailed it nicely. A decision-making agent. A blockchain could use an AI to make decisions based on the data stored in the blockchain. For example, an AI could be used to evaluate the risk of a loan application based on the borrower's credit history and other data stored on blockchain. That's number 1. Number 2, as a data provider, a blockchain could use an AI to provide data for smart contracts or other applications on blockchain. For example, an AI could be used to provide real-time market data to use in automated trading algorithms. Number 3, as a participant in the blockchain network, an AI could be a node on the blockchain network to participate in the consensus process. This could involve using the AI's computational resources to validate transactions and add them to the blockchain. And the 4th final, as a decentralized autonomous organization, an AI could be incorporated into a blockchain as a DAO, which is a decentralized entity that operates based on predetermined rules encoded into smart contracts. That blew my mind. That was literally my first interaction with ChatGPT, and that's what it was telling me, that it could be a DAO. It can basically, and I think I mentioned this in another breakout session maybe weeks ago, but for me, I thought that was really like just eye-opening that it offered that. I didn't prompt or anything. It was my first like interaction. But anyways, I just thought that, when I saw that, your subject here, that I should probably pop in and see what it was about, because I've had ideas about incorporating it. And one idea I do have that you don't have in the sources to pull information was, maybe it's obvious or maybe you do, I don't know, was using a direct connection to Charlie 3's Oracle protocol.
Well, I would say that what you're saying is interesting, but now to calm down, that we actually shake that idea already away from that. We are focusing on AI that basically acts as a DAO, or AI that deals with trading or all that stuff, because the focus here is the data management of meetings and operations. So for a call like this, would there be any use for AI trading bot? Although the idea of like an AI DAO.
Yeah, and I'm not pushing. I'm sorry, Tivo, not to cut you off, but I'm just that was just reading what it offered. You know, as literally my first interaction, it put out the notion of trading. You know, I mean, I'm not looking to talk. I'm more actually number 4 was the point that I was getting at, was the DAO notion. But yeah, I think you're probably just about to speak to that.
On the chat, there is a discussion about the proposal data. I put that as under Google Sheet because currently, well, I don't know what to integrate with. So you can't really integrate it to IDSK. And so we would have to pull that data as a text file or something else. So upload, so import data, so not upload the text file. Let's do another one here.
Yeah, I suppose I was thinking of basic reference information, Tivo, where, you know, if you're having training data for the AI, then you need some source of truth for catalyst data, like proposal data, for example. So that would just be, so if there's questions relating to that data, there is a source of truth that's being trained on, you know.
That brings up a good point of AI, what the AI bot could do. I wonder if we have anything here like decision tree, create meeting items, suggest items, most controversial topics, extendability. So we don't really have like a feature that deals with Catalyst.
I mean, another thing I think, because Vanessa's put in the comments as well about if you've done any work with training AIs on documentation that could be interpreted in different ways, meeting documentation is probably one of the last things I'd do because it's very subjective, and it's you would need to do a lot of training to intermediate what the kind of meaning of, for example, minutes of a meeting would be. So are you trying to do that, Tivo, or are you trying to get some other kind of record of a meeting? So that, for example, the agenda of a meeting may be more static, you know, it may be something that an AI can learn easily. Same with proposal data. You know, it could be just like question and answer data, it's called, you know, on a large language model could more easily learn a question and answer if there are things that are factual that can be answered. Yeah. So I suppose what I'm talking about is questions of interpretation of the text that you're putting in.
Yeah, I think, well, the scope of what kind of data this all will be trained on will technically decided on the solution, the specific solution, the scope down solution we will address. Previously, the idea was more on, hey, we have so many meetings and they are public and they are on YouTube. Could we go through all the Catalyst town halls and capture summaries, capture action items, capture decision items, and kind of train the AI to learn from previous Catalyst town halls, and also perhaps warm YouTube. We have hundreds of videos there about all kinds of stuff related to Catalyst, and use that information to train the AI to answer Catalyst specific questions. So
But the problem is you seem to be missing a step. The step is training, okay? Because you can't just put all that data into a large language model, because you'll just get the associations based on inferences between that discrete set. There won't be any point of reference, okay? So what you need, for example, if you just chucked all the data in, it would just make inferences on the data that you've given it. Okay, so you need to contextualize the data. Okay, so there's a step missing, I would suggest, Tivo, that you need to look at, for example, types of meeting. What's the different structures of meeting, so that the language model knows this is this sort of meeting, you know, kind of thing, because not all meetings are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second part you're mentioning, this came up as a community collaboration, that yes, there would be like template configurations made by each of these working groups who want to use this AI to provide basically the structure of which the AI will fill in. But that is a cool starting. Maybe I should have started from there. When we took this blank page and we started, okay, what are the components? And like what kind of components are required to build the solution I described before? We came up with like a dashboard, audio dissemination, community collaboration. So actually the training data would be fourth component. And
but you jumped straight to the presentation of data when the data that you haven't solved the problem of the data itself. Like some of the people in the community have already fed data into large language models, such as you know, Otter AI transcriptions. Like I've done that myself, and it comes up with very inconsistent results because it doesn't understand context. Yeah. So if there's a huge problem there, or you need to resolve before you get to a dashboard.
Stephen, pardon me, I'm trying to actually keep it myself. But when you say give it the context, do you mean the context of like the problem that the project is solving altogether? Or do you mean just sort of prompting it initially to understand how to answer?
Yeah, I mean prompt engineering, but also not just prompt engineering, but also you'll need to tell it not to lie, for example. So if you're dealing with any amount of factual data, like we are in Catalyst, for example, if it doesn't know a fact about a proposal, for example, it'll make one up, it'll approximate it, it'll infer. Okay. Right. So, and that could be disastrous, obviously. Because you just get this, you'd get this kind of fiction back, right? Of which could be quite interesting, you know, but it's not really what we're trying to achieve, you know. So,
have you sort of teased around with prompting the AIs?
Well, yeah, but it's like it depends what you're trying to achieve. Like if you took all the text from some meetings and chucked it in there, you'd get some weird inferences based on that set, but it would lack contextual information. So a suggestion would be you start with very small contexts, like here's a type of meeting, it's structured in this way, okay, that kind of thing. And if you don't do that, you'll get something quite might be interesting, but quite messy, and you can't rely you can't rely on it for anything factual.
Right. You know what I mean? I think it makes sense what you're saying. You have to give it context, and it basically like I've seen out there is prompting it with like I've learned to give it a role, and I've got here. I'm going to put in the chat actually. Let me just stop stuttering and just put it in there. But giving it the role, and even before giving it the role, talking it into a conversation, like sort of leading it into the conversation and speaking in a manner with certain sort of framing and vernacular and structure, it's going to meet you, right? And then once you get it to sort of talk to you the right way about the right subject matter, you say, okay, I'm going to give you a role on this, you know, made a project, and then you give it the role, and you give it one of these prompts. I just gave you guys the link. And so if you gave it the proper role and sort of tweak the details of the role to fit whatever you're trying to discuss, I found it to be incredibly, what's the good word? Appropriate, like it doesn't go out of line like you just described, and I've seen it myself, where if it doesn't know about something, it's really good at seeming like it knows, like people have experienced and seen this. But if you tell us explicitly, stay within X parameters, or only reference something that we've talked about or something that I told you, it will stick to the script. So if you get it there and give it, or define the what the sandbox is, it'll stay in there. It's pretty good at role playing, actually.
Yeah, but that's also a danger as well. Like, for example, I fed it some transcripts of some of the Scottfest talks, where they were talking about the Edinburgh Decentralization Index and Voltaire and all that. And they gave us a plausible summary, but they didn't know the meaning of what they were talking about. So they came back with a kind of half-truth about a summary. He took something that was, yes, it was relevant on one level, but it didn't summarize all the relevant information, because it didn't understand what the talk, in this case it was the Edinburgh Decentralization Index, it didn't understand what the Edinburgh Decentralization Index was. Okay, so it came back not nonsense, but partial. Yeah. And it will always be like that with any of our conversations, because a lot of our conversations make reference to things like this token or this conversation on Twitter, kind of thing. You see what I mean? So
hey guys, sorry I'm late to the discussion. I got caught up with some. I'm running a Twitter space with like 70 people in it at the moment, but good to be here. An AI which could be a DAO which makes decisions based on DAO rules. To kind of throw it out there, I've just spent $250,000 with an AI company to build this product. So I'll leave that as a kind of a stinger, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, I would actually come back to the training data, because yes, now we realize this context matters. Could we brainstorm quickly, give some time? We also can use chat, or you can join on the Miro board, to think what kind of data we would want to use. Do we only want to use it on a Catalyst content, or we have some specific avenues we could train it on? And then later we will do some voting between all of these suggested contents and give everybody, like, I don't know, based on how many variants we have, like 3 or 5 votes, and see the heat map of what kind of content would be the most interesting to contextualize the AI bot, and then use that bot to
yeah. So at the moment we've taken a transcript of, well, I say taken, we're taking a transcript of every video that Charles has made on the IOHK official channel, on his personal channel. We're taking every transcript from Catalyst Swarm as a text file. We're taking every video transcript from every Catalyst meeting all the way back. We're taking every SIP on the GitHub. We're feeding that into the model. We're also taking white papers from projects and putting that into the model as part of a paid service, because we have to monetize this platform, obviously. We've put, again, I've already said this, but we've put $250,000 into the AI building of this. It's going to be based very loosely on ChatGPT. So you're going to be able to ask it a question about Cardano governance. You're going to be able to say, hey, Nojunk, who came up with the idea of contingent staking? And it should be able to, and we'll have a working prototype before. We're not going to ask any money for this, but we should have a working prototype. I mean, SnapReady said they want $1 million ADA to do this. We're not charging that much. We can do it for far less, but we're going to ask. So basically, we're taking as much data as we can, but I really want to hear what kind of data gets taken. We have a DAO, the Nojunk DAO, and it's a free DAO. It's free to enter. You don't have to pay for an FT, anything like that. You join the server, you get access to the DAO straight away. You're a member of the organization. It's a big undertaking. Obviously, I wanted SnapRelia to do it, but they said they couldn't do it for $1 million ADA, so we can do it for far less. And yeah, I just want to hear the kind of content that we should put into this, feed into this language model, as well as obviously we're building the visualization tools as well to show transactions on chain.
Who's doing quality checking on that? Who is doing fact checking on that?
The DAO, and the DAO is free to be a part of. Anyone can be a
Right,
part
and
of it.
you're open sourcing the that, you know, that's quite a lot of work to fact check all that. And you also know that that needs to be transparent as well, that, you know, so you need to be recording on an open source repository the kind of questions that you've asked it and the test results that you're getting from it.
Yeah, well, because I've put $250,000 of my own money into this, it won't be open source until that $250,000 is brought back. It'll be a closed source model until that point. And that's based on a video that Charles had back in March of 2021, sorry, where he said that it's okay for businesses that are working within the Cardano ecosystem to be closed source for a certain amount of time until they get back their principal investment. And then there's an expectation that it eventually goes open source.
That may be okay for you, but you're talking about people here giving you suggestions and data.
Yeah.
So that's that, you know, so people here have to make that decision based on you being closed source initially.
It would be if we received any funding, it would instantly become open source. If we didn't receive funding to build this, we would have to keep it closed source so that we could profit from it. But if there was any funding that we received for it, we could cover our principal costs, probably not all of the principal costs, but we could cover the principal costs and it would instantly become open source.
No, I wish you well, but you see the current circumstances as one of trust.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And to be honest, you know, SnapRelia said they can't build this for less than $1 million. And obviously, you know, if they want to build it for that price and keep it closed source or open source, that's fine. What I'm saying is, hey, I've already put the money down at this point. So we're going to build this. It needs to be open source from a trust basis, because how do I build a system that doesn't go, oh yeah, NodeShark is the best project in the world and have biases built into it? So I appreciate that. It does need to be open source, and that is where we're going with this. Obviously, there are business elements to it, but you're 100% correct. It needs to be open source in the end product.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and also returning to TiVo, because this is a workshop about TiVo. As I understand it, the proposal is that there's also experiments in the community, like small scale experiments, which is perfectly fine and should be encouraged, to people to build their own language models and do their own prompt engineering and so on. And that is really what you want in a decentralized environment, as well as larger DAOs or organizations doing larger things and using those resources, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Especially actually the current version of this meeting is about scoping down to a very specific outcome. So actually, like, choosing do we want to just focus on training data? Do we want to focus on an AI bot that does specific thing? What kind of specific thing? So to get out the minimum viable, instead of what Violent is bringing in, the whole infrastructure to build everything, to train everything. That is not the call. Well, in the end, that would be that big proposal. But with this call, we want to get down to a tiniest module or a context we could build from, not using millions, but what could you do with $10,000?
Yeah.
Can we start anything with that? And so,
TiVo, it's also your intention to sort of educate as well, and to sort of for people to learn how to do this as well.
that's secondary with the mini proposal workshop. Although this is a very unique version, because one thing is, when you look at through the mini proposals previously, the solution ideation was too big scope. So now we have this weird section on this side of the chapters, because it didn't fit into the chapters. But that's always comes up when you do actually proposals for the community. Like, how do you scope down your proposal into something that is manageable and understandable by the voters and assessors? Because I think there is too much risk to provide a proposal, say, we need $1 million, we're going to do an infrastructure, we're going to AI tools, because that is that trust element.
I've already shouldered all the risk, right? I've already paid for this product. I've already paid for it out of pocket from my money from Crypto Magazine. I've liquidated.
But this is not about your project. This is about all the projects who want to build AI services.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying ultimately is you're absolutely right. It needs to be open source, and it needs to be able to be unbiased as a format. But right now,
can we focus on
this is where I'm going, Stephen.
Thibaut's right. We're not interested. You've had your pitch.
I'm going again, Stephen. This is where I'm going with it. What I'm saying is, when we support other projects creating AI-based solutions, we need to make sure that as a community, we have certain standards set for what a fair and valid AI model is. And I think Stephen, when he spoke about open source, it's an incredibly valid argument to make, because how do we know we can trust the data that's going in or that's coming out if we don't know what data is going in?
Yeah, Thibaut, could you concentrate on the small-scale proposals, small-scale tasks, which can involve everyone in the community and not a single player?
Right now, I feel very forceful. I would have to just mute. But all right.
I mean, sorry, it's a very worthy endeavor, but I didn't want to, and because people need to learn all this as well, because it's a very important skill we all need to develop. So, I really support what you're doing here, because, that knowledge needs to be spread. It can't be just one organization doing it for everyone. It'd be great to try and identify something small that we can all work on and learn from.
Yes. And on that note, what you are providing, Violent, is a service, but what we are doing here is we're trying to find a way, how do you describe your service? And we're actually going even deeper into a question, what kind of service we should even offer or start with. And this is always like an open discussion, which will go back and forth. We captured some of the training data. You mentioned a lot of things you are using in your tool. I captured these things in here. Does anybody have some ideas on their own what kind of training data they would use, and where will they first mind go through when they see, oh, there is an AI that can automate meetings? What does it mean? That is up to you to decide. And once you know, like whatever that means to you, what would the first data you will try to train it with?
Of course.
I mean, we do use AI tools already. There's something to bear in mind. Like, for example, the transcription stuff that we use, like Otter AI. So I would also emphasize the educational aspect to it, particularly in community education, particularly raising people's knowledge of the issues around AI. So to address like what Jeremy is saying in chat and Vanessa is like to start with small context, certainly not to generalize big models, because there's a whole lot of issues there in terms of consent, in terms of who's doing the fact checking, in terms of who is licensing under a closed license before they're releasing to an open license, that kind of thing. So that's all for other people to get on with and to pursue their own commercial interests. But from a community point of view, as usual, and particularly in the context of Swarm, is let's have lots of voices who can experiment with this, based on, like the work, Jeremy, a lot of us here have conversations about discrete things, okay? So what would it mean to create a model around that? It wouldn't answer all the questions that we have, but it would give us some learning ourselves into how we can train models.
Can you repeat, what does it mean to create the model?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a combination of things. It's not just large language models. There's also there's things like factual training as well. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're just trying to create inferences from text, that's one thing. But for example, if let's say you just wanted a very simple AI that was very fast, you could use a very small large language model using just Q&A modeling, which would be a lot larger, less sample size, and would just answer very straightforward questions, for example, about Project Catalyst proposals. And that would be a nice trial run. It wouldn't answer all the questions in Catalyst, but it would give us experience in the community, okay, to see how it works.
A little bit of context. There was discussions about different AI models. Two of them were mentioned. One was actually using ChatGPT, the ChatGPT-3 as a pre-trained model, and then using our data to basically fine-tune it. And another discussion was also BARD language model. I can't really find that now.
I mean, ChatGPT is just a front-end interface to a set of large language models that you can interface at the back end. BART, I think, is, I mean, maybe is a Google model, maybe, I'm not sure. But there are alternative models, absolutely. But the thing is and I think what I would like to see is actually, because this is obviously going to become part of our core skills that we need to develop, is for people to become familiar with this, okay? So I would encourage, and I think what you're doing here, Thibaut, is really great, because it's starting just to think about what it means to take something small and to then train that using large language models or factual sets of information.
Violent revolution.
Yeah. So there are lots of language models that you can use, as you correctly outlined. ChatGPT is a collection of various models. I think one of the major, let's say, motivations behind building this, if we go all the way back through the cause of this current discussion topic, is that it is, and I think the problem statement was, it's difficult for people to keep track of discussions and the narratives in a decentralized system. The idea, I think, would be is that if I think the exact words, if disseminating and documenting meetings are time-consuming activities, and if the solution is a sustainable open source community infrastructure that provides AI tools to automate meeting documentation and to retrieve insights, I think the best way to do this is to feed it, again, as much data as we can, to build it in a way that gives the average NFT degen who doesn't engage in Project Catalyst, who doesn't engage in governance, who doesn't really understand, or maybe the barrier to entry and the barrier to learning is way too high for them. You have to bear in mind, it is a select, very small group of people in the grand scheme of things that actually engage in Project Catalyst and these discussions. We want to make that, and I say we as the collective, everyone in Catalyst who's right, everyone in Cardano that's right-minded and has good intentions, wants to make that more accessible so we can onboard more people and bring more people into our ecosystem and bring more people in discussing governance. And if we can give them a tool that can at least give them the high level overview of things and products and the history of our blockchain, then we will hopefully give them the resources to be able to engage in governance from an informed perspective, from an educated perspective, and not have to watch the tens of thousands of hours of content that have come before them to even catch up to the conversation. And before we go to the hands, I'll say just one thing. There was a poll conducted at the beginning of this breakout room, and there was one last week. And we found out that the vast majority of people who engage in Project Catalyst and get into these breakout rooms have been here for over a year. What does that mean from a data analytics perspective? Well, what it means is that the vast majority of people who are here are not new people. We're not attracting new people in the same scale that we're attracting or getting back the old people that were already here. So this is a problem of demographics. This is a problem of, if we need to get more people into governance, we need to give them the tools and resources to get onboarded in the first place.
Rocky one.
Just wanted to piggyback what Violent just said, and also what Steven said regarding specifically education. I've said many times or whatever. Anyways, I'm working on my own project. I don't know what I'm calling it or whatever, but it's going to entail education was the you know, the impetus, and different ways of getting people to, you know, have access to, you know, financial tools and education that aren't normally available. So, you know, when I saw that ChatGPT, you know, or this AI level of AI was available, for me, it was a no-brainer. In fact, I posted something way back when Ben Goertzel and Big Pay did an interview with, you know, when Pay interviewed Ben Goertzel, and I posted on Twitter about that, because I'm like, how is this not like, you know, I don't know, you know, A1 sort of goal, you know, for so many developers out there to say, hey, we got to get this into our apps to start, you know, getting people involved. In any case, I like the idea of education and getting people accustomed to using and sort of interfacing with AI before you have them sort of making decisions, you know, or whatever. Beyond that, I think they just have to get comfortable with giving it information or learning how to communicate with it. And I think education is sort of the most seamless way. It's like, hey, if you're gonna be attracted to it like honey, and it's like, oh, hey, want to know something about Cardano? Yes, they do. That's why they're here, right? Anyways, I'm just kind of, I guess, reacting to, you know, I agree with what you guys are saying about the education. I think that should be definitely something worth looking into, or making it a focal point to get people's attention and go for there.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I agree with Ricky there that education is paramount. I'd like to address more is not necessarily better. The people who've been around a long time have been around a long time for a reason. It's because it has built up trust networks. And a lot of those trust networks are based on certain kind of intimacy. Okay. And also, a lot of people here over a very long period of time have contributed their own intellectual property based on assumptions of trust. And one of those assumptions would be that their IP wouldn't be used by some closed source company initially, but we have to trust them to be open source, to sample data on something that that you know, a lot of us know that, you know, a large language model will just be inferential, you know, not accurate, using their own data trainers outside of this community. That doesn't really sound like expanding demographics, really. And anyway, expanding demographics is not an end good in itself. It's about how our IP is used in an intelligent way, in an informed way, and in a way where trust is maintained in our community. So I would echo what Rocky was saying. You know, there's different opinions on this, but really, for me, the education is about our education. Okay, you know, like improving our knowledge base on small scale stuff. And I would actually maybe start looking at how we put Creative Commons license on our material now. So maybe we should start considering that this content should not be sampled by an AI, for example, because without our permission, you know. So yes, a lot of our content is or soon to be Creative Commons, but we probably should add an attribution on that basis from now on.
Yes, let's hear Ken as discussion, and then I will want to focus a little bit on the dashboard side, like how would we visualize if, let's say, all the other elements are in place, and then we move to the last, or maybe not the last, but another step of voting. So Ken, your thoughts on these discussions?
Just as an idea, like say instead of using an AI model, you just aggregated the information in text form and then build a search algorithm for it. So like using term frequency and like the how many documents contain information about different things, to just do a search algorithm so that you can search through the data to find the information that you're looking for. Like on the discussion of freedom to use the information, like the idea is so that people have the opportunity to learn what is out there. And like if you're giving the information out in a public space to teach people, then I don't know, it's hard to say about like using information in a learning model. Like another thing I wanted to bring up was just that like Stephen was talking about the idea of inference, and I think there's two different kinds of inference that you can look at. Like there's the sort of fuzzy inference that you would have in an AI model, but then there's like logical inference that you can have if you have some structured way of saying, okay, this is a definition that the community agrees on as a good definition for this term, and maybe you could use that as training data for an AI model. Like if this is a definition, and maybe comparing whether or not the way that the AI model is using that data is in line with that definition. It would be complicated to do that, but that's just an idea of something that could be used to further train data that people could work on in a more open source way. Like, because there's like AI itself is fuzzy. There's always going to be a bias, like everything about human perception, and the AI is sort of mimicking human perception. It's all based on taking a pattern and trying to abstract some information out of that pattern. And so that process is the same as any form of bias, like because you have some understanding of a situation to begin with, and you're using that understanding to try to take patterns out of some complicated model that is beyond being able to be understood in every bit of context. Like when someone says something, you don't know the full working of their thought process and what, like every detail about what they meant when they said it, because there's ambiguity in the process of communication. And so that you have to take any AI model with a grain of salt, because there's going to be some form of bias in that type of reasoning.
Yes, Vanessa?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I fully took in everything you said, Ken, but I think it's really, what I think you said is really interesting. I'm just thinking that it's not so much a matter of things being biased or anything like that. It's just that we need to think through a bit about what we're training an AI to do, I feel. Because to prompt an AI, or in fact teach anyone to do a task, you first need to kind of break down and analyze and understand how you're doing it. And it feels like with documentation, people haven't always thought through and analyzed how they're doing it already. So like in terms of documenting a meeting, how do we understand the context of it and assess what is important? What data are we using? What processes are we going through? Because I think we'll often find that there's a colossal amount of material that goes in. And I don't know how feasible it is to teach an AI to do that. I think we need to think a little bit more about what tasks we would use an AI for. You know, even like in the chat, we were talking about the idea of using one to create a meeting agenda. the things you decide to put on a meeting agenda are probably to do with all the things you've been doing for the last 2 weeks and all the things you've been thinking about, all the weird dreams you've had. And then you go, yeah, I'll put that on an agenda. That's a lot for an AI to, it could come up with a template. Yeah, of course. But I don't know if it could populate an agenda.
Yeah, I think that I'm using the term bias in a very generalized way because it's the same process. Like the things that we consider as being biased, like where someone has an opinion that doesn't take everything into context. That's sort of a negative connotation to the word, but it's the same process when you're going through all those thought processes and all the things that you're trying to put together into an agenda. You're using some form of bias. Like it's basically just you're abstracting patterns out of the mess of everything that goes into the process. So like you're saying, okay, these things, I deem them to be more important than these other things. And that's how you're going through the process in your own mind to build up an agenda. Like it's just the same with an artificial intelligence. Like the training model affects that bias, like what goes into the process of abstracting out some patterns in the overall data. But when you look at the model, like the people who are using the AI to try to find information out from what's gone on in the Cardano community, they have to be able, like, in order to use AI in a way that is valid, you have to understand that bias is going to exist no matter what, and take it as a fuzzy inference and not like something that's built on logical truth.
Yeah, I think that is a good place to put that idea to the rest, that whatever the outcome is, there will be bias, but now thinking strategically, what is that feature we could then first work with, and then if we don't even touch a decision tree or like agenda items, is there something what AI could do that is much simpler, doesn't have that heavy bias in it? And yeah, so keep that in mind. But we have updated this small dashboard a lot already, or like this Miro board. I would want to dive us into the dashboard area because we haven't touched that as much. And at the start, I mentioned like, okay, the dashboard should have an option to import data. We covered that. And then another thing which was very important for us was the data sharing between groups. And this is the consensus discussion, which we kind of had from the community collaboration side, like how do we build our trust? Would there be something else related to dashboard, what we are missing other than, which is like very closely related to dashboards? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? When we think about like a dashboard component, the front end of the user, where they can integrate the tools into their own tools they use for work or wherever, and the tools that do specific AI tasks, agenda items, action items, find questions from history. Let's assume we all have that. What kind of features this dashboard should more have, and like what were the comes up, or did these two sticky notes already cover everything that dashboard should include?
Sure. So I see it as being like a kind of a wider model that could create a visualization of those kind of interactions, those kind of agenda items that could, in the same way that we're kind of doing right now with Miro, could draw out various routes and paths and derive from context, which is very challenging for AI to start with, but could derive from context the map of ideas, the map of interactions, the map of essentially how the narrative around certain structures has been constructed, right, around certain ideas. I see it as a large challenge, and I see it as only something that can be solved by not just tens but hundreds of people building and contributing towards such a tool and resource. I mean, we are looking at a simplified system right now, and I mean, again, without offending anyone here, the reason I've kind of put my money where my mouth is on this is because I want to create a foundation that we can all build from as a community, and that we can all work together in an open source, free, aligned with the ideals of Cardano way, to build up a structure that allows us to more effectively communicate, not only as a team, not only as a community, but as a blockchain and as a system of governance that we're all a part of and building. But yeah, it's a challenge, Tivo, and I appreciate that. And it depends on many factors. When it comes to the end user, how should they interact with it? Or when it comes to, like, say you're a company that wants to draw data from this AI model or whatever, can we support and sustain that in a way that is covered and paid for? I mean, we all look at what we want to build, but we have to look at the price. We have to look at the cost associated with building that. I would love to see the possibility to export people's data to their own tools, to places like anywhere from JPEG Store to Sunday Swap and everyone in between, and even small NFT projects, to be able to go, hey, I've put all this data in. Can I export this and add this as maybe an API or something as part of our product? I think the information that we generate and the insight that we generate is a public good and a public utility, like water, right? It shouldn't be seen as a kind of a closed off system that is run by oligarchic organizations. It should be a resource for everyone. And as such, yeah, that's the question I'd ask to the more technical people in the room. How, if you were building a product like this, would you make it more accessible to other people and other companies so that they could use the data, use the hard work that you've put in already, use the extensive costs that you've put in already to benefit not only a single company, because like screw that seems silly, that centralization, but to benefit the community as a whole? That's the question I would ask to everyone.
Yeah, I think this tool has to be open source, because else we're just gonna fight with Google and Microsoft, and we see their costs $100 to get the summary. It's like, well, they do a great job, but what the fuck is that cost? And Steven, you have a hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I mean, the reason why a lot of us participate is not for commercial reasons or product reasons at all. In fact, that puts a certain section of our community off. And so again, I'll go back to the impetus to us. Who can we work together here as a community, as friends? Who can we trust? And what is the ethical dimensions here? Who is willing to be open to the ethical dimensions? Who is not going to frame everything in commercial terms? Okay, because if you're going to do that, then people won't participate. There will be people who will not participate. A lot of them here, a lot of people here would simply will not be interested. This is not why I got involved in decentralized governance, for example. Not for the money, not for any commercial reason at all. Some people may not, there is a valid reason to do that in terms of course, people need to make money and run businesses, but there's also a lot of people here are just in it for purely just interest, for friendship, that kind of thing, and also for academic research. I know there's money in that, but still there's that as well. I mentioned the reputation certificates because it occurs to me, and this is an interesting thing that's emerging out of governance in Catalyst, or Cardano rather, is this transactional models of things. So, for example, we discussed it in 1694 a week ago or so, but also it's there in that paper, which is not getting that much attention. Would be good to have more attention to from December from IOG on reputation certificates, which also is a kind of transactional model. which is related to trust and the character of contributions. Okay. So, what is the nature of people's contributions, and how would that look like on in relation to a deterministic network, in a relationship with a deterministic network? And I think this is quite an interesting conversation here as well, because we're kind of dealing with issues of social issues versus commercial issues versus knowledge, and that the interpretation of knowledge, as Ken, put on, and how do we handle bias and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and all of those, Stephen, are really good points. And I don't even, and this is why this is, and I don't want to bring this to my project, so I'm going to say it in a generalist point of view, but I don't trust any one individual or any one corporation to build the de facto AI model that is, that has the collection of data for Cardano, that becomes the number one tool for interacting and understanding the history of Cardano governance. I don't trust a single person. I don't trust a single company. I don't think this can be an individualistic approach. Bias is a fair argument. In fact, bias is going to be rampant in every AI model that is built by every centralized organization, which is why it has to be run by a truly decentralized organization with no point of centralization. I agree with a lot of the points that you've made are incredibly valid. I'm not too sure about this reputation certificate argument. I think that is prone to abuse. It is prone to actually centralizing power, because who gets to authenticate who has reputation within the ecosystem? And we do also have to, even though, as you mentioned earlier, there aren't people in this for monetary gain, they're in this to build and grow an ecosystem and build a new system of governance. You do have to bear in mind, and I say this out of, I say this sincerely out of the most respect in the world, because you are a very intellectual guy, dude, but there does need to be financial incentivization, and there does need to be valid businesses being built on Cardano as an ecosystem, because businesses are what drive traction. Traction is what drives growth. Growth is what drives more people engaged in Cardano in general. So to tie a bow on it all and give a kind of an overall, summary, let's say, yes, these tools need to be open source. Yes, these tools needs a huge amount of community oversight. And yes, we need to incentivize the developers who are building it to actually build this stuff. I've put in the legwork to, as a gift to the community, say, hey, I'll get the ball rolling, open source, whatever, right? But I really, really want to see the whole community get behind the idea that if we do, and AI is the future, when we do build this AI that is essentially, and I'll copyright this if you want now, but chat, or trademark it if you want now, but chat ADA, if we do create that kind of system, we also need to look at how to make sure this system is very inclusive for everyone in the ecosystem, and not just the elite few who are lucky enough to get Catalyst funding. That's my, and again, I apologize if I've gone off topic a little bit, but that's kind of my high level overview of what we're doing. And when it goes down to the bricks and mortar, the bread and butter of the whole thing, someone's got to build it, and whoever will build it, all power to them. You know what I mean?
Thank you. This was a bit of inspiring text. Now let's end this discussion with Ken Stanton, and then let's do something crazy and try some voting on my robot. Ken, the floor is yours.
Okay. I wanted to just point out that the idea of that Stephen was talking about, of coming for the community and being put off by the monetary, I don't know if it's like the commercialization aspect of it. Just that those two perspectives are competing biases, and so like you're not going, even if you build the AI openly so that everybody's involved, you're not going to get to the place where it doesn't have any bias. Like, it's going to have bias no matter what, depending on maybe the breakdown, like what percentage of the input data has one bias over another or something like that. But like, yeah, like that, I guess what I would suggest is that you let people be in control of their own contributions autonomously, and then you give people, like people give others permission to iterate off of their knowledge base, and the AI stuff you have to always check its work. So like if you're going to use the AI model to do something, maybe it will give you insight into the complicated structures involved in the discussion, but you have to check its work if you're going to use it for something that has that need to be reliable, because it might not be unnecessary for it to be reliable. You might just be playing around with it and trying to see where those biases are, and that could be an interesting area of study in itself.
Yeah, and before we get to the vote, I just want to say, Ken, I'm not building what I'm building as a heartless capitalistic gambit. This is already going to be available for the community to try and play around with in a way that's essentially, you see what you get. If you like it, great, support it. If you don't like it, don't support it. I don't want to pressure anyone into saying, like, oh, this is the de facto model for this AI system. What I'm saying is, as my gift to the community that I love, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, for the blockchain that in my heart speaks to me as something that can truly revolutionize governance and give everybody a voice in voting and in any kind of governance system, that I am providing this as my little thank you for having me gift to the community. People want to build on that in an open source way, they're more than welcome to. I've got a small community of 200, 300 or so people, and it's growing. You may have seen them in Catalyst today, spamming I reject SIP 1694 in the chat, and it grows week by week because they understand the mission, which is to make a more equitable and fair Cardano. And of course, whatever AI language tool, whatever AI is part of Cardano at the very root, at the very core, I completely agree. It needs to take into account all the varying factors from all the different people and from everyone, and have everyone's voice be heard. So again, sorry to anyone that I came across as a little bit abrasive today. I do have a bit of a reputation for being a bit of an asshole, but that's because it's who I am. But it does come from a place of love, in fairness. And Vanessa, just to address your comment, you love the community in abstract, but you talk over and silence people constantly, talk down to everyone, speechify nonstop, and perhaps an actual love in practice. I'm sorry, I didn't have a dad around. I don't know how to be a strong masculine man or to how to express.
Can you not stop now?
Yeah, can you stop talking?
You brought this up. I'm going to address it.
You don't always have to have the last word, mate. You don't always have to be the one speaking.
This is not a therapy session for your fucking ego. Can we hear Ken, please?
Yeah.
You literally spoke over and silenced me. So you're a hypocrite. And do you know what? We'll see it on chain. We'll see your bullshit on chain. And do you know what? Scammers fear the node chart. Let's see the violent revolution succeed. And quite frankly, I'm working to give a gift to you guys and to give a gift to the community. If you're a scammer and you want to fucking pocket the change for yourself, you're more than fucking welcome to. Shark, I'm out.
Ken, you lowered your hand. Was that from previous or?
It was just from the previous.
Okay. Technically, I feel like we may actually have now easier time to do voting, but we'll see. Am I sharing screen? Yes, I am. So on the screen, you will see 6 purple stickies. These are basically the rules. So we are basically do 6 voting rounds in one go. We could mess a lot up, but let's see. We are smart people. I trust you to click on sticky notes and let's see what will happen. So going into these rules one by one. So on the left side, split this kind of board into 5 different sections, actually 6 different sections, as there are 6 different purple stickies. On the left side, we have this dashboard, including this import data as the dashboard features. So I will give everybody 4 votes, and every sticky note you see, only give 1 vote to it. If you have 4 votes and you only want to vote on 1 sticky, then just leave the rest not used. And what are you voting for is basically the closest sticky note to the dashboard, which is important for you. Can you post the mark again? Yes, I can. And you can also go like deep in details and get like, if this is something very important, we shouldn't miss, info might not be as public as we think it is, then add a note to that. It's going to be difficult because you have 4 votes and we have a bunch of sticky notes on the left side, including the import data one. Skip out the dashboard. Actually, should have started with it. The main vote we are trying to do here is you have 2 votes to choose between 4 of these orange sticky ones. So dashboard, training data, audio dissemination, AI bots, and community collaboration. So with this choice, we basically, what component of this entire infrastructure we will scope down to, or what we as a collective think we should scope down to. Then we have 3 votes, 1, 2, 3, in the middle section on the green sticky ones, where you choose what kind of integration you would want to see on the dashboard first, what makes most sense to you. Then on the right side, we have 2 votes to share. This is a new one. We won't see the result from what we did previously because that's all new data from this session. But I give 2 votes to choose from the training data above here. So skip the training. So skip the top 4 ones because these are kind of obvious and that we have to keep them in. But these yellow ones, choose one which makes most sense. Do we want to hone down the Catalyst content? Do we want to hone down in the community discussion? Or actually, let's look at all data. Then we have another, actually, I need to more sticky notes here in the middle. So 6 votes. Actually, I didn't give you the 2 votes. So we have 11 now. 6 votes for the, to the right side, all the audio dissemination bots. So not the orange ones again, but all the yellow ones around it. What features you would like the most? Skip the white text. White text is most like extra insight, but not really a votable item. You can vote for it, but don't. All this thing, the issue is that you can do whatever, but let's try to stick under the rules. And final vote is 5 votes. So we have total 23 votes. Go one of these yellow sticky notes in here, and we can include in the red ones if these questions are very important and we should pay attention. And outcome will be a heat map of our basically collective senses of what are the most important areas of all of these components and also the component itself. So this is the outcome we had. And based on the results, I am assuming we only had 2 voters, or 3 voters actually. So we had a bunch of people on the Miro board, but not many did voting because of the amount what was voted on this. And we get a very all over the place results. That's also interesting. So basically almost everything we discussed are somewhat important. So now I'm gonna, although the feature side, there are some things which are less. The most which comes up is creating meeting minutes and question answering. Interesting. Now, if let's open up what results we had on our previous session. Yeah, well, basically now is the feedback because this is the result, and we see this result is all over the place. And but comparing to another one, this is interesting that it's skewed much more to the community collaboration compared to where our mind was. We actually did a vote again, and we were very equal between auditing bot and the dashboard, and the community collaboration felt the least required, where right now in this community feedback, this is the most important aspect. Let's try this. Let's try again, but only to one vote. So I'm going to share a motherboard. I'm going to set and see if that changes anything. So that now, of course, we have seen the results. So that's already inserts a little bit bias, but that's fine. I'd rather do it nicely. So we take only orange sticky notes. Eric gets 2 votes, 1 minute, go, join. And now we have only orange sticky notes to choose from. You have 2 votes, 1 for each. Choose which would be the most important areas.
I'm getting a lag here.
No. All right. That is so much different. I guess that was a bit of too big of a chunk to do all the votes then at the start. My bad. I'm gonna put that on a side. Then let's dive deeper. That was actually now we're in this weird predicament where training and community is the most important. So let's dive in. Let's do another voting. 1 vote, 1 minute, only training data and only community collaboration. Which is more important? Enough of voting. It showed then, I guess, do I delete this result we had before? Because doing it one by one shows that there probably was misunderstanding on the first voting. Or we just keep it in, just as a reference that there was experience trying to vote on everything. Have we learned something from this? Let's start with community collaboration first instead of building an AI tool. So if we propose, we first need a tool to do a community collaboration. And if we take in that previous discussions into like what are the main focus points of community collaboration, on the right side, a slight update on what kind of templates to configure, but more focus on building the consent and actually even having reputational side that, and the fact that AI should be able to describe how the user interact. So this is more.
I kind of like what Ken was talking about earlier about biases, because I mean, in statistics, a bias is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that always has to be there. You know, it's like you start from an initial position and you just state what your initial position is. And I suppose, you know, that applies also to even this exercise that we're doing now, where, yeah, so it's not going to be the definitive answer, is it, Thibaut?
Yeah, of course not. Well, what it is an actual, somewhat like a data-oriented feedback, what could be considered as decisions how to proceed next. So, yeah, actually, that's a good point. Perhaps I may want to start closing that breakout room and then kind of share like a future insight of what this feedback will be used for. But does anybody else want to add some learnings or something we didn't cover into this discussion? And was this voting itself useful? Did you see value in that, or was like, oh no, that was way confusing? When before you had some concept what we are doing, now you totally lost.
I thought it was quite interesting, but I think if I sat and reflected on it or let it mull in the back of my mind for a couple of days and then came back and voted, I'd probably vote differently. I think it needs time to settle.
Hmm.
Yeah, it can be a bit confusing initially. I mean, I'm not quite sure what I was voting for, but I kind of just felt the force.
Yes, yes.
Pretty much like a general election then,
Yeah,
really.
exactly. Yeah. I just let my hand guide me. Yeah, so.
Well, lesson from me, instead of trying to describe all the voting facilities, I should go one by one and then have a question in front that I probably that would help a lot.
I don't know, because was it Carrie was saying it doesn't matter if it like trial and error, you know, maybe just I quite like the fact that you tried different methods.
Yeah, being able to remove the noise when you're trying to focus on a specific decision, like where, like if say that you had a tool for doing the same kind of voting, it's like different than Miro board, but if you were able to take the information that was specific to the vote at hand and just focus on that without being able to look at all the other details, because you need to be able to focus on something, and that's sort of where I think things went wrong in the first attempt.